So, good afternoon and welcome into the game, everybody. It's Laura here. I'm joined with Mike Doecke, who's joining us half an hour earlier than most of us. He's joining us from Adelaide. So, welcome to Mike.
Hey, Laura, good to be here.
So, we're just in the process of waiting till we've got most of the people across into the lobby. Then, what I'll do is just do a bit more of an introduction of Mike, and then we'll get into a bit of a discussion. As you came in, you probably just heard us discussing a hand. That seems to be what bridge players do a lot of the time, doesn't it? Isn't it hard?
It's actually, we're very fortunate in Adelaide still to be able to play the occasional actual in-person game of bridge. Wearing masks and everything, of course, but...
Yeah, how are you finding it, sort of playing with masks on?
Yeah, actually, the best thing I've done relating to that recently was to get some anti-fog spray for my glasses, so I can actually see, which is a positive thing.
Much better when you can see and it doesn't fog up.
Yeah.
That's actually an interesting point though, because I know that like one of the things I think is a real advantage about your game is that you take in a lot about what's sort of going on at the table and people's different inferences and things. Do you find that you're getting anything less out of people now that they're wearing masks?
Yeah, interesting. No, not really. But that is true though. I do sort of tend to play a bit more of maybe a poker style bridge game than some people might.
Yeah, I think that you've got one of the best poker faces going around at the bridge table. I was actually gonna basically ask you what you think people should do to improve their poker face at the bridge table.
Actually, that's a tricky question. I mean, I guess for me anyway, I just have a background of having played poker for a lot of years. Sort of even before I played bridge, I was playing poker and sort of played it reasonably competitively. So it just took a lot of training. But I think a major thing, and this is sort of kind of true of a lot of the players that are difficult to play against, is they haven't got a lot of fear. Like if you haven't got much fear and you don't sort of mind doing the wrong thing sometimes, then it becomes a lot easier to have a poker face and not give too much away.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to play plenty of times with you and also against you. And it's like you could be having an absolutely wonderful match and trouncing your opponents, and you could be having the worst match and being the one that's being trounced, and you'll be exactly the same throughout the entire match. And then at the end, it's always got a smile as well and a really polite interaction with the opponents. And that's something I really love about, playing with and against you. That's for sure.
Yeah, cheers. I mean, if you're not enjoying yourself, it's kind of what's the point? Is my philosophy at least, and it is easier said than done sometimes. But yeah, certainly playing against you guys, Laura and Pete, it's always great fun too. Hopefully,
with that table in the room that everyone's saying, "Shut up, be quiet, stop laughing and having fun. This game's not meant to be fun."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all right. Well, it looks like we've got a number of people in now, so I think we might sort of start, I guess, the formal proceedings of the day. But yeah, we're already well on our way. So it's Laura here. I'm the manager of Real Deal, and in the lobby with me today, I have Mike Doecke, who is one of the best players in Australia, has represented Australia, also represented South Australia on multiple occasions. I've been lucky enough to partner Mike on a couple of occasions and also been a teammate plenty of times, a couple of fifth places in the Gold Coast on teams together. Don't know if you remember the second one, Mike. But yeah, great player, more importantly, great person and really vibrant person to have on a team with and really uplifting. And I think you bring a lot to a team and the table just with your approach to the game. Welcome.
Cheers, Laura. Thanks. Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate in terms of bridge. I started playing when I was sort of early 20s and managed to sneak onto the Australian junior team a few times, got to travel a little bit and made a bunch of close friends. that I've sort of maintained for the last 20 years, which has been just awesome. And more recently, over the sort of last 4 or 5 years, I've been the non-playing captain of the Australian junior team, which has been a ton of fun too. A bunch of great kids, some really talented players have been coming through. And so I've had the pleasure of traveling with them around the world to quite a few cool tournaments, and some of the kids have done really well. We've had some good results.
Yeah, some absolutely excellent results coming through from the youth scene, especially with you at the helm as the captain. Now, there might be some people in the audience who have no idea what a bridge captain does, why we've got them, what they do. I'll just give you a quick rundown of my youth team captaining experience, which would be completely different from Mike's. I got to captain a Victorian youth team, which was a development team with a bunch of 10-year-olds. And during that, my main thing was just make sure they had food, they had water, and if they had a match off, I got to take them to places like the jail at Fremantle. That was great. I think at an Australian level, though, you would have had a much different time. So why don't you
To
tell us
be
about that?
fair, feeding your team is more of a hassle than you might suspect. It depends who's on the team. Guys like Matt Smith can be a bit of a challenge to feed sometimes. Matt's one of the strongest youth players, but also one of the most hopeless in terms of regular life skills. But no, it's been a ton of fun. I was sort of very fortunate that all the kids are a bit more mature, sort of in their kind of early 20s, and were pretty competent at doing most things, and fantastic bridge players. So yeah, a lot of the captaincy before the event is trying to sort of push them in the right direction in terms of their development and their sort of training, and get them sort of thinking and spending their time on the most important things. For one of the pairs, it was trying to tell them to stop adding stupid things to their system that was already way too complicated. But yeah, at the actual events, like Laura says, it is more of a it's too late by that point to change too much in terms of the strategy. You're just kind of trying to keep the players on the straight and narrow, keep them thinking positively, keep them playing well, and yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of like some of the tasks, just a thing to clarify as well, if you're a captain in bridge, you don't actually, well, you can be a playing captain or a non-playing captain. In this sense, Mike's a bit too old to play on the youth team. Not by all that much, though. So not playing, but basically just to summarize some of the tasks and things that you do, what do you get up to, Mike?
Well, the main thing that you do in terms of an actual practical task is to put the lineups in, because there often is a little bit of strategy to not just which pairs you play. Usually you've got three pairs, so 6 players to fill just 2 pairs worth of slots, so 2 tables, and kind of working out which pairs play well against which kind of systems, and making sure the players that are about to go in to play against a particular kind of system know what they're going to be doing against it. Because in these sort of higher level events, some of the opponents play quite complicated systems. They might use unusual bids, that kind of stuff, and you have access to those convention cards in advance. So as the captain, you sort of check through all that stuff, find out particular pairs do well against particular other pairs, so on and so forth. One of the interesting choices I made, which worked out really well, was in the World Champs in China, 2018, I think it was. The Australian team had a very strong pair of girls from Perth. They're both really lovely girls, great players. Renee and Francesca, you might have heard of them. They've done a lot of great stuff. But they actually commented to me that when they played against the Indian pair, who was like, it was 2 sort of slightly socially awkward Indian blokes, they were very uncomfortable playing against them because, yeah, for whatever reason. And so we made sure in the teams event to match those guys against Francesca and Renee, and they did really well and sort of took them out of their comfort zone.
Just clarifying it, I'm hoping it was the Indian partnership that was uncomfortable, not our
Yeah, sorry,
partnership.
sorry. Yeah, I think that they just weren't that used to, because they had an all male team and just weren't that comfortable playing against um, girls at that point. So yeah, especially girls that are very talented bridge players, and they kind of underestimated them a bit, I think, and yeah, got creamed. So that was a sort of the kind of lineup choice that you might make as a captain, is sort of trying to, yeah, tweak
But
the lineup.
yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. So, like on the world scene, if we think about the youth division, there's basically what's effectively the open youth, which is open to male and female entry. There's also a girls division, which is open to females. But there are some countries around the world that strictly have separated that so that the open is they only submit male teams and then they submit female teams for the girls. Some of them also do this for strategic reasons. So when I played the Polish team, the girls team actually beat the boys team in qualifying, but they wanted to send the girls team into the girls division so that they could absolutely wipe the floor in the girls division rather than having a bit more competition in the open division.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
it's interesting. I mean, it is fantastic to have women's bridge in general as a way to bring more women into the game, because it is one of those things that I'm sure over time, in 20 or 30 years time, the standard of women's bridge will be a lot higher. But it's certainly one of those things which is kind of a building point, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I have to admit, I'd feel a little bit bummed out if I wasn't able to qualify into our effectively open youth team. That would have made me pretty sad. But luckily, we don't do anything like that here in Australia. And a fair chunk of our top level youth players are female, which is great to see.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly makes the dynamic of an event a lot more fun to have a sort of mixed event. I think just the personalities and everyone just gets on really well. It's yeah, good fun.
Yeah. So also, I don't think we've got anyone from South Australia in the audience today, but one thing I love about South Australian Bridge is you guys have a lot of depth to your field there. So regularly, just even in terms of qualifying for the state team, it's no one's a lock. Everybody's going in and fighting it out for those spots, and it could kind of go anyway for probably at least like 10 pairs in the qualifying, I think. Fill me in on that sort of scene, and also, I guess, why you think that is.
Yeah, we are pretty lucky, I think, in South Australia. We've got a pretty vibrant Thursday night state night for the bridge still, and even for the past year, we've been able to play all but sort of a month or so. We've been still chugging along, playing a really decent quality session a week. I think one of the things that sort of keeps it going is there is a pretty good social scene. A bunch of us, maybe 20 or 30 people, tend to head to the pub after we play a session of bridge, and have a couple of beers and chat about the hands, and having that kind of atmosphere where anyone's sort of welcome to join, and it kind of does turn the game into a lot more of a social thing, which motivates everyone to keep coming out. And yeah, it's definitely, that's a big part of, I think, of why the SA scene is yeah, quite busy, and most of the strong players do keep playing.
It's interesting in terms of that going out afterwards. I mean, it adds something more. It's a really social community feel to it. But also, I like having that conversation with your peers about the hands afterwards, because I'm sure that nothing else is spoken about, really does allow you to analyze the game. And I know that's an area that, yeah, you're pretty passionate about after being on the receiving end of playing with you, and a couple of weeks later getting a bit of an email about some areas that could have been improved, such as not bidding no trumps. Um,
Actually, in the we played a longish tournament together, Laura and I think Laura declared about half the hands, like total, as in half the hands that were. No, but yeah, in seriousness though, yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, and especially as an improving player, getting the opportunity to chat to the top players, and that was absolutely a thing for me, being able to chat to some of these guys like Zoli Naji, who's been on the Australian team 50 times, and Phil Markey, who's something similar, and all those kind of guys who are kind of ambassadors of the game who've been around forever. In SA, they really take the time to chat to anybody, and so yeah, quite a few of. It's definitely a reason why I think SA does have a bit more depth, because we do sort of have this share the wealth kind of mentality a bit more than maybe a bigger city might have.
Yeah, and also it sounds like there's sort of that ambience, which is really good too.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
in terms of, I guess, analyzing the game afterwards, what sort of strategies do you use, and what do you think sort of some of the newer players and up and coming players can do to look at their game and figure out what they did well and what they didn't?
I think one thing that I try and avoid doing, which can often be a trap that newer players analyzing the hands can fall into, is getting too fixated on what the results are on a particular board rather than on the actions that led to those results. Um, Sort of as an example, yesterday, one of the hands where I made a mistake, the mistake didn't actually cost anything on the hand. It was completely fine. There was nothing to it. But after the hand, I was sort of looking through the board. I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Like, if there'd been a different layout, then the mistake that I made would have really cost. On this time, I was lucky; it didn't. But I think a lot of people go into an analysis and they sort of look at the hand and go, oh, look, the double dummy solver says I can make this many tricks. I didn't, therefore I made a mistake. Rather than looking at the actual play itself. And obviously that's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but certainly if you can take a step back and stop getting too caught up in whether you got a good or a bad score on a hand, that will definitely, I think, improve your bridge in the long run.
I think also just appreciating the, yeah, kind of as you're alluding to, also the position that you were in at the table. So sometimes you might have your opponent's preempt a level higher or do something that won't be the standard action around the room, but you're, of course, forced to deal with the situation that you're in, and being able to appreciate that that might have been a different problem compared to the problem that the other players around the room had, and how that might change things as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah. And another thing is that you can't win them all. You've got to do the best you can on every board, and some boards, um, yeah, you're just stuck. Yeah, I mean, certainly some of the philosophies that take into playing bridge do come a lot from ideas in poker, specifically relating to concealing your hand whenever you can. I think a lot of newer players have a tendency to make bids like game tries. Say, for example, if you open a spade, your partner raises to two spades, rather than sort of making a game trade there where you might bid, three clubs or three diamonds to say that you've got a bit of stuff in diamonds or a bit of stuff in clubs. Maybe inviting your partner to bid game or to just bid three spades. All those kind of bids where you're sort of giving up information in exchange for helping your partner a little bit are bids that I think most expert players tend not to use very much, just because giving up the information about what your hand is can be so costly. And I think in that spot, I would almost always either pass the two spades or just jump to four spades, and sort of make the call looking at your own hand, and you pay out sometimes, you get a good score sometimes, but you do it all without giving up any information. I think the information aspect of bridge is pretty underrated, especially when you start playing against some slightly more experienced players who are good at defending. Telling them what you've got is a big cost.
Yeah, any invitational sequence, I reckon if you're defending, make sure you're really on the ball, putting a lot of focus into that hand because they're going to be the ones that you've got a really good chance of beating as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is and it's a spot too where I think doubles of those sort of contracts where you know that the opponents are in kind of a touch and go uh, game because they've had an invitational sequence, and you might know that trumps are breaking badly, or that you've got cards sitting over declarer's long suit. Being able to double there can be a easy way to pick up a great board.
Yeah, definitely. So you've talked a bit about doubles. You've also talked a bit about, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I have to admit, I think that you're a player that it's not uncommon to take the opponents for something like 1400 or 1700, but at the same time, you occasionally go for those numbers as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah, no. I think, and this is another kind of sort of poker philosophy that in poker, if you never, this is something that is kind of an adage. If you never get caught bluffing in poker, then you're not bluffing enough. And I think the same applies to bridge. If you're never getting caught, uh, doubled after you preempt, raising partners, preempting, getting doubled. If you're never getting doubled at bridge, you're probably not preempting enough. You're probably giving the opponents too easy a ride. You definitely want to, crank your preamps up a little bit more aggressively and try and put the pressure on when you can.
I also kind of
Yeah,
apply that to people who are bidding slams. If they're not going down in slams, they're probably not bidding enough slams. Although I
yeah,
do, yeah,
certainly slams are is a thing, especially among newer players and youth players that I tend to try and give the opposite message only because youth players just love slams so much that you've got to sort of work out where your base point is. But certainly for a lot of people, they can be a little conservative in the slam zone, but definitely that's not a problem that any of my youth team ever had.
I think yeah, if you're getting to a spot where you're going down in the vast majority of your slams, you're a bit too slam happy, wind it back. If you're never
Yeah,
going off in slams, you're not bidding enough of them.
no, definitely.
Oh,
Yeah.
just reminds me of our slam, our slams
Oh,
in
dear.
the
No, we had an unlucky run. That was for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I think we how many slams did we bid? You probably have the numbers better than
Yeah,
I do.
quite a lot. Quite a lot.
Like
I sort
seven
of tried to
or
black out, but
maybe one made.
yeah,
Sometimes
no, I
you don't.
mean, and certainly one of the great things about bridge is that there's so many different kinds of bridge that you can play. The match point pairs that you guys are going to be playing today is a particular style where every trick matters. You can also play imp bridge, which is a bit different, where the scoring is more about trying to minimize your risks to find a guaranteed line to make a contract rather than playing for the over tricks and being able to sort of mix and match and play different forms with different strategies is one of the things that keeps it fresh.
Keeps it fresh and going, definitely. If you do have one of those disasters that I'm sure we've all had around the place, how do you sort of dust yourself off and get on with the next board, especially at match points? It's something that you need to do, and it's actually great to do because that board's gone. You don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely again going back to my sort of stuff being an NPC is that there's no sort of right or wrong answer to that question. It's very much a person by person thing, and I'm sure that Matt and Jamie wouldn't mind me mentioning this, that they're one of Australia's top youth pairs, that they've just unfortunately become too old to play. But despite being fantastic people, very mild mannered and calm, they were awful at recovering from a bad board. And so, sort of over the course of a couple of years, we kind of talked a lot about that exact thing. How do you move past a bad board? And the solution that worked for them was for one of them to literally leave the table and just go to the bathroom, wash their face, like have a bit of a just a 30-second break, and then come back, and that was enough to get them out of the kind of the dumps or whatever you want to call it, and worrying about the board. But yeah, for some people it's not an issue. For some people it's a huge deal. You've got to sort of be honest about yourself, that spot, and yeah, realistic.
I think it's also a thing that you can have your partner sort of on the watch out for, just in terms of, like, I know I used to be I just wouldn't leave the table, and it took till I sort of played with Pete, and if we did have a bad board, he said, go get some water sort of stuff after the bad board
Yeah,
to make it
definitely.
happen.
It's often the worst when you don't realize that you're affected by the board. That can be definitely, yeah. You can sort of go on about your next board, not even realizing that your brain is still on the previous board. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of top players use stuff like meditation techniques in order to try and clear their head between boards. I know, talking to Satai, she's a big believer in stuff along that sort of direction.
Yeah, and I guess it's hard as well. Like, if someone is sort of getting in their zone and doing that, some people can be a bit offended at the table if they don't hear something, or they just seem disconnected. But they might just be using one of those mental techniques to bring themselves back into the game and catch up to speed. So we're just over 2 minutes before play. So at the 2 minute mark, everybody's going to be whisked away to their table for the game today. But Mike will be back in the lobby after the session. Any last quick tips in the last 10 seconds or so, Mike?
No, have fun. That's the most important thing. Enjoy yourselves.
How about we get everyone to smile at the start of every round? It's amazing what smiling can do.
Cheers, Laura. Good luck, everyone.
Good luck and enjoy, everybody. Over and out from us. Bye for now.